All right, welcome back to session 4 out of 5 of the Empathy Circle Facilitator Training. And you and we are actively continuing our efforts to build a culture of empathy through our practice of the Empathy Circle and also practicing these principles in our lives. One reminder is we are recording this session for educational and promotional purposes. We want to make this available and accessible to everyone. And we do want to give us all a chance to check in this morning on our experience over the last week. And so before we do that, I want to let you know that we have all around maybe 15, 16 minutes to do that. So I want to invite us all maybe just to arrive by checking in with yourself. Just to take a moment and imagine over the last week, thinking of facilitating an empathy circle or doing a buddy call or practicing this stuff in your life or any questions that came up. Out of all that, what's the one most important thing you would love to share with this group? Maybe something you learned. So I just want to invite you right now to join me and just settle in, take a deep breath, and just arrive and just reflect on what you'd love to share that would, contribute to you and the group about your experience over the last week. We'll have about 30 seconds each. So we just want to keep it really brief and to the point of what you'd really like to express, checking in from the last week. What's been most meaningful for you? Maybe a learning, maybe a question. And I'll call on folks as we go. And we'll try to keep that to about just half a minute. So let's go ahead and start with Elizabeth. Welcome back. What's one thing that's up for you that really most meaningful for you for the last week?
So I've been thinking a lot about how to encourage other people and pandemic professors to join the next cohort. So I think having us who've already done it is a great way to encourage others because we can share our experiences. So people feel less intimidated. So I've been thinking about that a lot this week and how we can encourage others.
Great, wonderful. So thanks for reflecting on that. And also, it's a question, right? We can talk more about that. So thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. Welcome. Dominic, most meaningful thing you'd love to share about empathy circles and anything you like.
Yeah, I wanted to share a mistake I made during one of the empathy circles. I modeled the active speaker first and then made the mistake of not modeling the active listening portion. So I realized that even though I had the same group of friends, I had to give a lot more critiques and comments throughout the session, and I could only model it at the end when it wrapped around. So moving forward, I would do the listening first.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thanks for that learning. Great little gem and reminder. Thanks. Savannah.
I think last session was really good and what we talked about, and I learned how to be more confident in facilitating.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Just confidence increasing. Gloria, go ahead.
Yes, last session was very helpful for me because I was able to get some feedback of what I could improve, especially taking a note shortly about what I should talk about when introducing about Empathy Circle. And I think that's really helpful when initiating my own empathy group, bringing my friends in and telling them what this is going to be about and how it goes. So that was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. Shyla.
Good morning, everyone. I had an empathy circle with family, and the one main thing I learned was to be very careful when you name feelings. You think you know the person's feelings and you think it's obvious to you, but either the person is not feeling that or they're not ready to accept that that's their feeling. So you are going into uncharted territories when you start talking about feelings, because I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and you have to be careful. I learned that you have to be careful.
Thank you so much, Shyla. Appreciate that. Okay. Wayne, what most important thing you'd like to share about the last week? Go ahead.
I've actually got a couple. The first one is I did empathy circles again with special education kids that were about 16 to 20. And it made me really realize how those students aren't fully heard. And through an empathy circle, just the appreciation that they had for the opportunity to say everything they did, because some of them took a long time. But that was really good. And the other thing is I had a wonderful empathy buddy call with Edwin, really being able to delve into some stuff in quite great depth.
Great. Thank you so much, Wayne. Appreciate it. And Magali, did I say that right? I always want to get it right.
It's Magali.
Magali, of course. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, so so last week I mentioned that I wanted to do like an empathy circle with my family, but I found that it was like really difficult, or like it was just maybe it was just like me like not knowing how to manage a group. And so today I'm like looking forward for the challenges. I feel like doing an empathy circle with like a family was harder just because like everyone thinks like it's a joke. So but it was kind of funny, but I'll definitely try again.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, grateful that we're all out practicing this and what happens, right? Discovering what works. Daniel, go ahead.
I think I just need to work on how to approach people to join the empathy circles. I think that's like a first step that I need to initiate, and that's something I need to work on.
Got it. Approaching people. Thank you. Elisa.
Yes. What I noticed is that when I hear something that they're going through and I have an idea of what could help, or they're sharing something and they say they're not sure exactly what to do or where to go. Just me thinking and getting somewhat excited to tell them about suggestions that could, I know, could definitely help them. I almost like it interrupts the energy because the person stops with their flow of just sharing because they're seeing the expression or they're hearing the sounds, but mostly the expression. So I learned maybe I'm gonna have like a piece of like notebook paper to like write down things, or like I don't know yet, but yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that learning and what happens in that moment, right? In observing, right? So thanks for that, sharing that learning. A couple other folks have arrived. Let's see. Monica, I had you next on my screen. Greetings.
Hi. So I learned that it's more important to acknowledge someone's feelings than to agree with them. I feel that it's more important for people to feel that that they're being validated.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciating all these learnings. And then Yihe, welcome.
You can call me Lala. I go by Lala. Sorry, I forgot to change this.
Sorry, I go
But
by.
you got my name right. Great on the pronunciation. I rarely get people get to pronounce my name correctly, so props to you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. I changed it. So yeah, I had a buddy call with Bill, and he gave me really good tips on how to be empathic, be welcoming and open to let the speaker know that you want to listen to them, whether it's a friend or a partner, but also set the right expectations. So when you need to leave, you can close the conversation without making them feel bad about, oh, you don't want to listen to me anymore, because sometimes they start to pour their hearts out to you, and you have to say, well, okay, I gotta go now. So how do you end that conversation gracefully without hurting the other person's feeling, but also to know that I was here, I listened to you, and I'm ready to, I'm open to have a conversation with you again when I'm available. So that was really helpful. Thanks, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I learned this week.
Right on. Well, I want to thank each of you for sharing not only, what we're learning, which is so rich, but also the challenges, right? Mistakes and what works, what didn't work, and wondering why, and growing. So we have some time right now for maybe the next 7-8 minutes for the trainers to respond to some of the questions and themes that will come up today in your check-ins, as well as anything else from like maybe last week. So we were talking before we met today, and we wanted to make sure to address some of those questions so that you can carry some of those insights forward this week in terms of your practice with people in a group. So I want to hand it over to Lou, maybe to kind of lead this section, and the trainers, please contribute, we'll go from there. Lou, it's all yours.
Thanks, Timothy. Yeah, so a couple questions that came up last week that we didn't have time to answer, so I'll speak to those first. So there was a question about cultural differences. What about doing the empathy circle with people that come from different cultures, or if you are from a different culture and you're holding an empathy circle in your, town or in your country, and things are just really different. So a couple things about that. So one is, one cultural difference is language, and whether everyone speaks the same language, or people are participating in a language that's not their primary language. And of course, if that's happening, you want to provide space for it. You want to acknowledge people who are doing that and the difficulty of it, and welcoming their participation. Sometimes people that don't, if the language that the circle's being held in is not their primary language, I've actually experienced people feeling like they really shouldn't be there, or they're taking up too much space, or they're mucking things up for other people because it's not their primary language. And those people should be reassured, as a facilitator, you really should reassure them that they are welcome and that the participation is important, because there's a richness that comes from different kinds of people's experience. So that's one thing there. And then the other thing about cultural differences, so I have participated in circles where people come from really different cultures, and they will make comments like, well, in my culture, we don't really talk about this, talk about these sorts of things, or there's a very definite hierarchy in my culture, and I wouldn't be sitting in a circle with an elderly person like this and having them say these kinds of things to me, or me expressing my feelings. And what I would say about those cultural differences are that the participation in the circle is voluntary. So nobody is required to participate or required to express themselves at a certain kind of level. So that's one of the ways of accommodating for those differences. We welcome people's participation however they choose to do it, at whatever level of disclosure or whatever. But there are aspects of the circle that will challenge cultural differences, like the mutuality, that everybody in the circle speaks and listens to one another, and people are free to talk about whatever they want. And some of those people may experience some discomfort with that because it is different than what they are used to. And that's just, we're trying to build a culture of empathy and have people understand each other's. And I think as long as people understand that, like they understand the ground rules that's been explained to them, what the process is, and they're also free to leave. If they're feeling uncomfortable and they want to leave, they're certainly free to do that. So as long as people are clear about what the structure is, and they're clear about that it's voluntary, and that they are, they're free to participate or not, then I would say that's how we cope with cultural differences.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
as you're speaking, I'm really acknowledging that an empathy circle has certain cultural values, right?
Correct.
One is freedom to say what you want. Another one is equality of time and attention, right? In some hierarchical cultures, not everybody is equal to have time and attention. And then mutuality, folks are included.
Mhm.
And so those values can challenge deeply set kind of functional agreements in different cultures, particularly in families. So I heard several people say family is a challenge. Family takes as a joke, or some family members don't want to talk about feelings. Don't go there with me, you know. And I just wanted to acknowledge the depth and the power of family, because family is a unit that functions on certain implicit, unstated agreements to survive, to live together, and those are very, very deep. So, you know, working with the family is going to be challenging, and to acknowledge those patterns, and just I just wanted to acknowledge that is challenging, maybe the most challenging. Lou, anything to add to that, or anybody else?
Yeah,
About family?
yeah. So I did. There were questions about having. There was a question that came up in the check-ins about doing circles with families, and I did have more to say about that. I'm not going to address it right now.
Yeah, cool.
Shyla put in the chat, are they free to stay and not participate? My feelings about that have shifted. So originally I would have said no, everyone who's there, you know, needs to participate. But recently I've been involved in some other processes where there are people who are observers. They're not they have concerns about participating, like they don't feel comfortable participating, but they're curious and they want to witness what it's like for others to participate. So I've come around to feeling like I would allow that if somebody wanted to, but I would say you're either in or you're out. So you're either in the circle and participating, or you're witnessing it. I think that's what I would say. And I don't, I'm sure other trainers have other things they would say about that. We probably don't have time to hear from everybody. But I would say that kind of the original idea of empathy circles is if you agree to be part of the circle, then you're a participant. And that means that you take a turn speaking and you take a turn reflecting. Now, if it gets to a person and they don't have anything they want to say, that's fine. They could, you know, they don't have to speak. They can have silence, or they could say my turn is up. And when it comes to reflecting, if there's a person that doesn't want to reflect, I would say as a facilitator, I would try to explore with them why they don't want to reflect. Do they don't think that they can, or if they don't think that they should have to, like, I don't need to say back to the person, or it's beneath me to, that their attitude is, it's like beneath me to be reflecting something, then I wouldn't accept that as a facilitator. But if it's just that they're having difficulty reflecting back, like they don't think they can do it, or they can't remember anything, then I would assist them in doing a reflection. That's how I would handle that. The next question that was left unanswered from last week was about conflict. Is the empathy circle good for resolving conflict? And I would say that this comes up a lot. This is a very common question. And conflict involves mutual understanding, the two people who are in conflict coming to understand things about the other that they don't. And the empathy circle is very good for that, because it's listening and it's mutual listening, meaning people come to understand things about each other. There's another part of conflict resolution which has to do with, after we understand each other, what do we want to agree to do with each other going forward to make things better? Or is there something that's needed in order to repair harm that's happened? And those phases of conflict resolution are not explicitly built into the empathy circle. Sometimes they happen naturally if people are just taking turns speaking as things go on, but not necessarily. And so those are things you either need to add as explicit questions to consider in the empathy circle if you want it to be used for conflict resolution. Any questions about that? Okay. So next, there was a thing about empathy circles in families and naming feelings. Shyla talked about that. And I would just say, if you're a reflector and you are reflecting back the feelings that you think someone is having, you just want to be sure to reflect them back as a conjecture and not tell the other person what they're feeling. That's usually when people take offense, when you tell them what they are feeling as opposed to guessing, that you're an attitude of that you're guessing what they're feeling. But it is also true that sometimes people are uncomfortable having their feelings talked about, and that if you reflect their feelings or you guess their feelings, they will object to that and say, no, I wasn't feeling that, or because they're embarrassed about having their feelings even mentioned. And I would say that if that's a person's response, then you want to stop reflecting the feelings, because that they're not comfortable with that. Another tip for doing empathy circles in families is to make sure that everyone has a copy of the handout and understands how the circle works, and maybe even let someone else run the circle, so that you're not in a position of taking too much of a position of authority. So that's one of the things that can happen in a family, is that if one person is running the circle all the time, then that person becomes kind of like an authority and they have more power than others in the family. So it's good to try to distribute it. Yeah, and the other thing, someone made a comment about people not taking the process seriously, or as thinking that it's like a joke. And I'd say my tip for that is to acknowledge that this is unusual, and that it's kind of an experiment, and that you're inviting people into, and that it feels weird. So, because people who aren't taking it seriously, or who are kind of making jokes about it, what they're expressing is their discomfort with doing something new and different, and maybe something a little bit more intimate than they're used to doing, expressing, really talking about whatever's important for them. And so, yeah, so just a way of responding empathically to that is to acknowledge that, yeah, this is different. It is a little weird, and but it's an experiment. Let's try it and see what happens. Okay, I think that's it. Does any of the other trainers have something they want to add? Okay, great. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for your questions. And so now I'm throwing it to Bill, I think.
Yep. So today we'll be doing the facilitation practice. We will not be doing the how-tos. So to people who are going to be doing that, set the challenge level that you desire. You get to set the topic. We'll try 3-minute times right now, just so you have a chance to facilitate those transitions, which you need a lot of practice with. And yeah, and so and then we'll be back at 12 noon Pacific time, sorry, to debrief with the whole group. And that, I believe, is that.
Yeah.
And certainly if you have any other questions, just ask the facilitator. Yeah, Edwin, sorry.
Yeah, that's an hour and a half, and I'll give a 10-minute heads up before we come back. So I'm ready to go into the rooms. So Kelly and Susan, you'll co-facilitate one group, and Bill, I'll be with you in the group here. So here we go. We're all set. See you there. Get ready for your challenges, if desired.
Okay. So is this I don't think this seems a bit big for, you're muted, Edwin.
Sometimes it takes a while for like some of the
Okay.
cell phones to move to the next room.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
They're slowly, and Wayne will be moving too. So
Okay.
Wayne should be moving to room 3. I think they don't, push the button like others.
Oh.
I think it's frozen from.
There he goes.
Okay, so this is the group then, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Okay. Let's see. We have about an hour and a half. We have 3 participants to facilitate. That gives you about 30 minutes each, and we'll take about 20-minute facilitation with a little bit of chance for like a 10-minute debrief after each one to just kind of discuss how you're doing. And are there any questions? Is there anything that people are not clear on? Shyla?
No, I just turned off mute, that's all.
Oh, that's that's
I
definitely.
think I think I'll have the questions as we go along.
Okay, that's fine. At any time, you'll set the topic, and you'll also set your like if you want a particular challenge or no challenges. Remember that you have a chance. You can choose what level. But at any point, you just put like a little timeout, and okay, what's happening here, or something. Or Edwin and I might do that to explain something we're doing and why. So that's fine at any point. Or timeout, this is a little bit confusing to me, this is what's happening. So feel free to be able to do that. Okay, so what you'll do as a facilitator is that you'll set the topic, you'll let us know, what kind of challenge you want. Only one of us will do the challenges. We won't both. Edwin is particularly, aggressive, I know. Okay, so Edwin's not going to do any challenges. So I'll be the bad actor here, if you wish them. And so levels, challenges, time, and then we'll take 3-minute turns. You'll keep the facilitators will keep the time and do the warnings and stuff like that. And I don't know, are there any other questions that you have? Do you feel prepared? Okay. All right. Who would like to start first?
Did you say 3 minutes for each person?
Yeah. Right now we're going to do 3 minutes. Just as an overview, 5 minutes usually that's a really good share. But in these shorter 20-minute things, we do 3 minutes so you have a chance to do the transitions, because that's an essential skill in facilitation, is to give people the warning and then move it on. And the one tip that I give you is that what I'm trying to do as a facilitator is I'm trying to balance giving everybody, an equal turn, mutuality, and also feeling heard. So I don't want to cut people off, too soon. But on the other hand, if it goes on, too long, then other people are shorted in their time. So that's sort of the balance that you get. And you'll find this is what this is for. So you get that sense of balance and what you feel comfortable with.
So Bill, what do you mean by give people warnings? Time warnings?
Yeah. So one of the things that everybody does it differently. So that's one of the things. So what I have is I have my iPhone, and I'm not timing 3 minutes. I won't be on you for that. That'll be on you. But I have the 20 minutes. So just so we, I can keep things. But generally, so I have a little piano riff when it goes off. And so generally, if people are talking, they hear that. And so they, so they kind of finish up and then, move on. Sometimes people are really deep in it. And if people are really deep in it, they don't hear it. They don't, and that's okay. And I just take a note. So what the pattern that I do, which is not the only way to do it, is that I let the sound go off, the little piano riff. If they hear it and they acknowledge it, great. If they don't, then I wait till they finish. And then I wait till the person who's reflecting is giving them the last reflection, because we want them to get their last reflection. And then I hold up this very expensive handcrafted sign that it's a visual cue. And so that just kind of, yeah, okay. I told you he was aggressive. And so, yeah, and so then that generally does that. So that's they generally get it then, and if they don't, then I kind of will politely tell them that the time is up. Does that
So like if I'm the facilitator and I'm keeping track of the 3 minutes,
right?
This thing goes off loudly, my iPhone.
Right.
Should I then silence it then? Because
it's interesting. You'll find your own. Yeah, I mean, so what I do is when the piano riff goes, I let it go once or twice, and then I silence it. That's where I found the balance. If you let it go 3 times, no salesman will come to your door. I mean, that's that's the, and so so that's what I do, and that's kind of interesting. So if they're aware of it, okay, then they're kind of aware of if they're really into it, they don't hear it, and then I'll do the thing later. And that's just the way I do it. And you can find your own sweet spot there, but it works pretty well. That for me.
okay, I volunteer to be the facilitator.
Okay, so get your timer ready. 3 minutes. Any particular kind of challenge that you wish, or no challenge?
Challenge?
Yeah. Do you want a challenge or not?
Yes, I'm sorry. What I meant to say, yes, challenge.
Okay. So,
yes, I would like.
Is there a particular kind of challenge that you want to practice with?
I'm not sure what my options
so
are.
one would be like a person, the reflector, totally missing and misunderstanding the reflection, not adhering to the time limits, distractions, things like that, just to name a few.
Well, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, and about how severe do you want those challenges to be?
Medium.
Medium. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, let's start it off.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm not going to do the introductions because
right. We assume you've done the how-to. Everybody knows how to do it.
So the topic that I thought about, which I'm struggling with myself, is how comfortable are you in expressing your feelings in an empathy circle? You can either talk about that, or you can talk about anything that's pertinent to you right now. So who would like to be the first speaker? And I will be your active listener. Any volunteers, or should I pick?
I could speak.
All right, Dominic to the rescue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dominic.
Of course. Whenever you're ready, let me know.
Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about your prompts. How comfortable am I speaking about my feelings? Honestly, I'm someone who's always been comfortable talking about my feelings, and sometimes I've talked to people who are less comfortable with it. So I kind of am more hesitant when I speak in these circles because I don't want to burden someone. I'll stop there.
So Dominic, what I understand you're saying is that you personally are comfortable with sharing your feelings with others. However, you are concerned about, or you seem concerned about sharing those feelings with others who may not be prepared to listen to your feelings. Did I get that right?
Exactly. Yeah, because I know that my friends and family should not be treated as my therapist to the extent that a therapist would hear, more intense emotions. I guess it's less about friends and family. It's more about peers that I don't know. Some people I've met have been like, oh, this is just this relationship is more of a work relationship, or or an on-campus organization relationship where it's less like I'm supposed to be talking about what's alive for me particularly. So, yeah.
So when you're with your peers and you want to talk about your feelings, there is some awkwardness in just that relationship by definition, because they're not your therapist who would naturally through training be able to tell what the intensity of your feelings are, or they're not even friends and family who might know you a little bit better, but they are your peers. And so there's by definition some kind of awkwardness around that in sharing feelings with your peers.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little distracted by Bill's message.
Me too.
Yeah, I think part of it comes down to the fact that most of my friends are men, and that we're not really socialized to talk about our feelings. So it's more unusual to kind of start talking about it. And luckily, my friends are more in touch with it. But I've just noticed that about my peers. Like, as I met a bunch of people in college, some men are not as comfortable with it.
So you have noticed in your past experiences with men in particular, men who you met in college, where they have not been socialized to talk about feelings. And because of that reason, again, there is that difficulty in freely expressing feelings. And you differentiated between men in general and your peers also.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. I feel her. Sorry, the message.
So
got me.
just as a point, one of the other groups, somebody dropped out, Daniel, in room 4. So there's only 3 people in that room. Gloria, would you mind if I put you in that room with them? You'll have a.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm fine wherever I go.
that will give you more time for your presentation, for your. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Shyla. I feel fully heard.
Thank you, Dominic. So I haven't been in such a small group before. And can I pick anyone to be the active listener?
Yeah.
So the only thing Edwin is not doing is Edwin is not throwing out challenges, but otherwise he's an active participant.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
got it. Okay, I pick Bill.
Okay, listening.
So I'd like to talk a little bit, touch upon the culture aspect that Lou addressed earlier in the circle, I guess, in a way it was. And I want to talk about, I grew up in India, Bangalore, India. And of course, I was not trained about feelings or expressing. Trained in the sense either expressing feelings or even having knowledge about feeling words.
No, it sounds like you were grew up in a deprived culture.
I was deprived of the training on the aspect of feelings, but it wasn't a deprived culture.
Oh, so you have no feelings.
I did have feelings. I did not know how to express those feelings.
Okay, so you had feelings, so you didn't have practice or talk about your feelings in your culture.
Yes. And culturally speaking, like Dominic mentioned earlier about males not being able to express feelings, in my culture, no one expressed feelings. Feeling words in general were dead.
No one in your culture
or
has
non-existent.
feelings.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. They were
okay.
non-existent.
There are no feelings in your culture.
There were feelings in the culture, but there was no expression of feelings in my culture.
So you weren't allowed to. Was that a misdemeanor or a felony if you expressed feelings?
It was neither. I'm sorry, I just want to laugh.
That's okay.
Okay. Yes, you actually would go to jail if you didn't express your feelings or if you didn't know how to. No, sorry. No, it was neither a misdemeanor or a felony. It was non-existent.
No feelings in your culture.
That's correct. That no feelings that I was exposed to. There may have been feelings in some families who were maybe more advanced in some ways, but not anything that I was exposed to.
Mm-hmm. So people had feelings, but they didn't express them outwardly.
Correct. And so when I came to this country in 1977, a long time ago, as a young person, I started learning more about the benefits of being able to express yourself.
So you came in 1977 during the disco age, and you liked to, so you went to discos and you went dancing and you found feelings.
No, I went to disco. I did not say that I went to disco.
Okay.
I did go, but I learned how to express my feelings very, very gradually.
Mhm.
I believe my time might be up.
Okay.
Is it true, Edwin?
How should I know? I don't keep your time for you.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a time out here and let's discuss a little bit what's going on, Shyla.
Okay.
Okay. So, so just to give you a little bit of feedback. So I was doing a horrible job purposely. You know, making all sorts of cultural references I have no permission, you know, I shouldn't be doing. And you were very good. I thought that your reframe was very good. You kind of gave me the reflection. And then I kind of escalated and you needed to take a little bit of a firmer hand. And one thing is that you don't waste time restating what I said. Just focus on what you want, role model what you want me to do to get me, you know, unschooled as I am.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I was having a very difficult time
Yeah.
being the speaker and the facilitator.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
didn't know at what point to correct you to be in the speaker mode. So I chose consciously to just be only the speaker because it was getting too difficult to be both.
Right, right. And this is something that does feel, just like the active speaker role, it does feel uncomfortable. And that's it. And that'll be something as you practice it, that's why you'll be a little bit more comfortable with. So what within that role, one suggestion, there's no always right or wrong. It's always like a balance in things, is that you could then role model the kind of reflection that you want. You know, and you did that at the beginning a little bit. And then I just kind of escalated to see exactly, you know, at what point you would then stop me and kind of corral me. And that's something just in this exercise that we're kind of, you know, looking. So what time, you know, does it go outside of the bounds of an empathy circle? It's no longer an empathy circle. You know, Bill's just acting out and that he needs to be redirected. And that, and it's not about blaming, but it's about setting limits but also role modeling. So the first step you did very well, and you do it, and you just may have had to be a little bit stronger in role modeling. You know, build this, you know, and then you start to say, well, I didn't go to disco, I do it. You know, you let me sort of kind of like, you know, infiltrate your mind.
Yeah. So as you were speaking, I was thinking what maybe I could have done is right in the middle of speaking, do a timeout and then become the facilitator and then just say to you, point out what you were doing. And I liked what Tim had said before, is just sort of like, okay, of course I noticed what you were doing and maybe I just needed to do that timeout to shift roles and then to just name what was happening. Right. Just name it. And you know, it also, he said, make a request and get an agreement with you. So that would have been a wonderful time for me to practice those steps.
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Okay, so I learned from it a lot. So thank you all.
Yeah, sure. Okay. You still have some time. So should we go on? And do you want me to, do you want to keep me, do you want me to keep on challenging you so you can practice that? Or do you want to, how you feeling? I just want to check and see.
Yeah, sure. Why don't we, I mean, I just said it. Now it's the time for me to practice it.
Okay, great. All right.
So, so back on track.
Okay, great. So we'll assume that your time is up, right? You got that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
The 3 minutes, if we're going back into the empathy circle, remember? You kind of lost track. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like you were also not keeping time. Did you lose time? Because
yes,
you asked me
I did.
what the time was. You don't have a clock. You're not watching time.
Yeah, no, I had it, but I forgot to turn it on.
Okay. By the way, I still do that.
So when you're thrown into this, first thing in
Yeah,
the
sure.
morning and have to play these multiple roles. I was so proud last time when Dominic started speaking and I had the time on and went off and the whole bit. And the
Yeah.
very next second or in a few minutes later, I lost it all. But
Right.
anyway, you lose
And so-
things only to gain them back. So here
Right.
we-
Yeah,
So
and what I do when I forget is I kind of ballpark it, and then
I tried to do that, but
Yeah.
Edwin caught me at my game. So
Okay.
like you said, he is the beast over here. If there was somebody else there, they wouldn't have known that I was I was just fibbing it.
Okay. Okay. So do you
I
want to
knew, I
finish?
saw him looking at things, and that's why I asked him even for help, and he wasn't going to help me.
No. He's
Like he shouldn't help me. So yeah, so I didn't do the timekeeping.
Okay. So do you want to finish up your speaking, or do you want me to assume that you're finished and I'll talk to Dominic
So
or
I
Edwin?
don't.
Actually, yeah.
I want just that one last challenge, if you don't mind. Dominic, are you okay with that?
Okay.
Thank you. So, and I'm going to give myself like seconds or like a minute. I don't know. how much
Well, whatever time you want. Go ahead.
And a quick note is I had moved Gloria over and then Daniel came back, but they're good with everything there. So there's only two of you, so you have more time. There's
Right.
also
Oh,
Bill. I just want
okay.
to let you know they're going to have just the two of them. So just give you.
Okay. I'm going to absorb all the learning as much as I can. So
Yeah, take your time.
I don't mind making a fool of myself.
All right, well, give yourself another 3 minutes since we have and I'll do a crappy reflection.
I don't know if I'm ready for 3, but okay, fine.
Okay, whatever you want.
All right, fine. So to follow up on the feelings issue, I first had to learn feeling words. And I did that in therapy, actually, at a much later stage. So I came as a younger person and I was exposed to a different style of communications in this country, which I enjoyed, but I did not know the various layers hiding underneath the superficial layer.
So you came and you learned some feeling words, and then you realized that that's all you need to do is just name some feeling words and you've done your work.
Time on.
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I noticed, Bill, as a facilitator, that you are having maybe you're not understanding the structured dialogue process that we are part of in this empathy circle. And if you could please reflect exactly what the speaker, as you know, like I was a speaker recently, if you could reflect what I was saying, either exactly or paraphrase it as close to what I said, as close to what I said as possible. That would be the way to go, because the goal is for me to feel heard, and I'm not feeling heard right now. So if we can please stay within the process, and when you get a chance to speak, another active listener goal would be to have you feel heard also. So if you have any questions in between, please raise your hand and use or say timeout, use the timeout symbol. I'll be happy to assist you as a facilitator.
Good. And then
do you have any
I'll
questions? Yes.
No, I'll just say, but so it was really good. When you said, say exactly what I said, I was a little bit, that would have been a chance for for me to cause trouble. And then you said, or paraphrase. And that was really excellent. Well done. So, I mean, I know it's a judgment, but yeah, nicely handled. Okay.
Okay, so now I'm back as a speaker.
Right, okay.
I'm going to repeat a portion of what I just said, Bill, and I'll do my best to pause so you can you can be successful in repeating back to me in your own words or in my words. So I realized that communications in this country was different, and there was a superficial layer, and there were many layers under that to dig into if one wanted to.
Okay, so when you came to this country, not only were there feeling words, but there were many layers, both superficial and then underneath. And it took a bit of time till you were very comfortable in understanding from what level a particular expression came from. Was it deep level or superficial level?
I feel heard.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I think Edwin.
Listening.
Okay. So it was really, it's been very interesting about feelings, because people, when you get into someone's feelings, people can feel either very heard or very offended.
So you're finding it interesting to talk about feelings because some people feel like, oh, they really feel deeply heard, and others feel offended by that.
Right. And that is, again, part of the art of facilitating, which would be a balance between, in this case, your particular relationship and what kind of circle, you're having. And is the person a stranger or well known to you? Yeah, a balance to balance all of those factors.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors to balance in terms of how do you listen for feelings, and you got to sort of know the context and yeah.
And so like for instance, if there's sometimes when people in a circle, they share and everybody feels very safe, and then somebody will go pretty deeply, and then you'll go and you'll say, oh, you might reflect something like you're having some trouble in your marital relationship, and that can be a trigger for someone.
So you can, if you reflect and somebody's sharing something very personal, and you maybe reflect that with that they could kind of get triggered or upset.
Right. And they'll give you feedback on that. One particular piece of feedback I got, somebody said, well, you're right, but I didn't exactly say that. So that told me I was kind of approaching the line and I shouldn't go any further.
So if somebody once told you that, yeah, you're close, but that's not quite right, then they kind of just made you aware that you had there was some kind of a line there that you shouldn't cross.
Yeah, except it wasn't that I was wrong. It was that I was probing a little bit too deep or very close to the edge. Although I didn't say you're having trouble in your
Yeah, so you're reflecting something sort of beyond the edge of what they were sharing. You're kind of going deeper, and that sounds like they were sort of you're pushing too deeply somehow.
Yeah.
Or sharing or reflecting something too deep that they hadn't maybe quite shared.
Yeah. And then so kind of think about relationships.
I think that's time too. She's holding up the time you weren't looking.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to say, excuse me, Bill, as a facilitator, I'd like to let you know your time just was up. And I just would like to find out from you if you were fully heard.
Sort of. It was kind of like disruptive at the end. I have more to say, but all right.
So you've got more to say. It felt a little disruptive, and yeah.
Okay.
Is it okay for me to say, is it okay for me to give you a little more time to finish what you were saying?
I mean, in the role that I'm playing, which is basically just being, an insensitive, rude person. No, I would say, if I were going and I was saying, my son died or something like that, or, my parents just died or something like that, I might give a little bit. I would look at the intensity of feeling and make a value judgment on that. And if I, just being my usual rude self here, if I did that, then you also are weighing, is this going to create a conflict, which would then take more time away? So, I can let him go and just give him another thing, and then, all right, he'll be petered out. Or there's no stopping this guy, and so I just really have to set a limit. So those are the things that you're balancing there. You did fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I might just quickly mention it. The other issue is you don't want to start giving an extra minute or two to someone, because
Yeah.
then the others feel like, oh, you're starting to favor this person with time. So it kind of shifts the sense of equality. So you can kind of let somebody just finish their thought, their thought that they have, with a quickly, and, try to keep to the time is what I try
Very
to do.
good to say you'll have another chance when it
Yeah.
comes around again. That's
Mhm.
very good. You'll have
Yeah.
another chance to do that. That's
Okay.
an excellent thing to say.
I have a question on time in general,
Mhm.
because I did read somewhere that you could do these empathy circles without any time limits at all.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've decided as a group here that there was going to be a 3 minutes, so we need
Right.
to honor that agreement. But in the little family circle that I had, people
Mhm.
did not want the time because they didn't want this thing to be buzzing and me to look at the time and, one more item of control or whatever it is they thought. So I did
Right.
away with the time. And they probably, not everybody spoke for the 3 minutes either.
Right. Yeah. So don't get stuck on the 3 minutes. The only reason we're doing that here is just so you can do the transitions. But yeah, you can, that's fine. If someone takes a half an hour and you're going to have a 45 and everybody else gets a few minutes, well, you got to factor that in.
Or
But
maybe just, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
No. But if you have a group and I mean, certainly on the empathy buddy calls, we're much looser on the structure.
Mhm. Or just maybe even just set a maximum time per person.
Yeah, if you feel like, if you go, like, you can even say, hey, look, if you go on for 10 minutes or so, I'll let you know, but if you really need to talk, and then, but budget the time, and that would be in a extreme case. Usually 5 minutes seems to be like a sweet spot.
Mhm. Thank you.
Edwin, did you want to?
Oh, I'll do it in my turn.
Okay.
I think I would like to speak to Dominic.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm wanting to bring this into the empathy circle, so it's not so much out of the empathy circle, the discussion. So can you just reflect that, Dominic?
Yeah, you wanted to bring this discussion into the empathy circle so that it doesn't stay too outside of the structure, is what I hear.
Yeah. So in my family, we did an empathy circle with no time limit. Someone went for like almost half an hour till the other person just said, hey, I want to speak too. So it's really good to set time limits to begin with, to sort of set a norm of, limited time. So I find it helpful because the aggressive people will kind of dominate that way. We want to give sort of a sense of fairness. So I really try to at least start with some time limits for that reason.
Okay, so I hear you're bringing up an example of when you hosted an empathy circle within your family where you had no time limit, and one family member kind of just went for a long time to the point where the other listener just said, hey, I want to turn. So you advise that having a time limit is helpful to kind of set a norm.
Yeah, because once people have had these time limits, they understand that the time limits there is to give a sense of equality of time to everyone. So then you have it sort of modeled, and later on, in another circle or after you've done a couple circles, you can kind of open it up more. Maybe extend the time to 10-minute turns, or you can do totally away with it in a general discussion. Yeah, so you can kind of play with the time. Yeah.
I hear that the time limit sets a norm of equality with people. And as you host more circles with the same group, you can open it up to like 10 minutes or 20 or more when the group gets more used to it.
Yeah. But I'm pretty fixed with the time. It seems like having time limits, people tend to appreciate that. I guess for some reason, Shyla's family didn't appreciate it. So it would be interesting to look more into that to sort of get what's going on.
I hear that you're in favor of the time limit because it just keeps everyone on the same page. But I hear you touched on Shyla's experience with her family and are suggesting maybe to get deeper into that as like why they're not interested in that.
Yeah, and I'll just touch on the feelings aspect. There's a process called focusing that's very much about being very much in the felt experience. And if you look up Gene Genlin focusing, you can learn more about that. Where instead of like here, I'm talking about ideas, is you sit and you just sense into what's happening in your body, and you just speak from visceral felt experience. So you don't share ideas, you just share the visceral felt experience and maybe where it's located.
So I hear that, I'll wrap it up, I see this time, that in Gene Genlin, I think is who you mentioned, looking up her idea of focusing, where we're not just kind of repeating cognitively what we hear, but we kind of sit into what we feel viscerally and speak from that, where it comes from, how it feels, etc.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. There's a lot more there. It's also Gene Genlin is a male, it's not female. Just
got it.
I feel fully heard. Yep.
Sweet. I see you have time.
Sorry, no, yeah. Is that a book called Focusing, Edwin?
It's a process. It's called Focusing. It's by Gene Genlin, and it's a process. It's sort of like active listening. This is focusing. It's called Focusing. It's also a book, I think, too. But if you just do Gene Genlin Focusing, I'll send you information later.
Yeah. Thank you. Sounds very valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah. So am I still okay? So now I'm going.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to have Bill listen.
Okay.
And I guess I will start talking more about emotions. But Shyla, are you ready to time? Let me know when I'm ready. Okay, cool. About emotions, I want to touch on what Shyla said about the at first not being as in tune with the emotions. I kind of felt that same way growing up within my family, because my parents are more like business people and are very like left brain, like calculations kind of people, and same with some of my brothers. So it was an interesting kind of like self-discovery journey to focus on that on my own time and kind of develop my own voice within that field of psychology, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So feelings are interesting to you, and in your own in your family, a lot of left brain people who are focused on business and reality and concrete thinking, and so feelings is something that is relatively new to you, but interesting.
Yeah, almost. It's less new to me now because I've spent many years focusing on it. But you're right in that, like, my family is focused on business, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So what I got wrong was that you've been actually focusing on this for a number of years. So it's not it's not new to you.
Yeah. But the novelty within my family made it interesting to me. So while it might not be new, it was something I had to focus on to learn myself.
Okay. So with your family, they were not much of mentors. They were not great mentors to you in exploring your feelings. So you had to do that on your own.
Yeah, I think not great mentors is a stronger way to put it. But at its essence, it was like I had to find mentors in other places, but not that they were bad mentors.
Okay. So you're not angry at your family. They were good people and good mentors, but not in the feelings arena. So you had to go look elsewhere for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say getting a therapist has been one of the best decisions I've made. And, luckily my parents support that and I was able to do that. And so in a way, that is my true feelings mentor, and it's been life-changing.
Okay. So you felt that you you benefit from therapy, and that's your mentor as far as feelings are concerned, and you're very grateful for your family that they even though they couldn't do it, they accepted your need to do that.
Yes, thank you. I see that's time, so I feel fully heard.
Okay. All right. Shyla, will you listen to me?
Yes.
Feelings. I have, interesting. Feelings are a very interesting thing. Feelings are definitely important. I'm a retired special education teacher, and I dealt with very difficult students who were very likely or had tried to cause harm to themselves or others. And so I'll stop there.
So Bill, what you're saying is you are a retired special education teacher. You find the topic of feelings interesting because it sounds like you have been exposed to students who have had to express their feelings in perhaps not very positive ways.
Right. And when they acted out physically, we would group up the team. I was a part of a teacher, there was a psychologist, and I had assistants, very capable assistants. And we would say, what's the communicative intent of that violent act? That everything we do, and this is, to me, was a revelation, still is. Everything we do, no matter how antisocial, we want people to hear us. I'll stop there.
So when these special education, special needs children acted out violently and physically, you had a team of a psychologist and adept assistants and yourself who would assess the situation, because you all understood that no matter what, whether you're special ed or not, we all need to be heard.
Right. And when we could identify what they were trying to communicate, the violence went down precipitously.
And when, I guess I was going to say moment, but when you identified what the reason was for that type of communication, and when they felt heard, the violence went down precipitously.
Right. But sort of ironically, when I was met with all of this anger and also physical attacks, I had to tamp down my feelings. I had to be, I had to tamp down my feelings. I mean, I would be physically attacked and I couldn't react, and I had to take it, I guess.
So it sounds like it was a difficult job for you when these students physically attacked you personally. You could not respond with your feelings, and you were expected to tamp them down.
Right. So it was interesting. So we would do a lot of debriefing at the end of the day, which was very important. I'll stop there.
So the debriefings that happened at the end of the day was really important to you, it sounds like, because you were able to then talk about your feelings and the incidents that happened during the day.
Right. And it was interesting because like there was when my son was 2, one of the students threatened to kill my son and find out where I lived and, kill my 2-year-old son. And I had very strong feelings about that. So what I had to do is I couldn't show my anger, but I had to kind of, control my anger and then safely hand this student off to another person and acknowledge my feelings. And I did a set of Tai Chi and other things like that to release my energy and stuff. So I had to monitor, even though I didn't have the capacity at the time to, deal with that particular student.
So there was, one of your students threatened to kill your 2-year-old son, and that made you very angry. And the way you dealt with that anger was first thing you did was you handed that student to a different teacher. And the second thing you did was you practiced Tai Chi to get that physical energy out of the body. And you didn't have at that time many other options to deal with those strong emotions, but it sounded like you were okay in the end.
Right. But one of the things I had done proactively, which is very good, is that I had an unlisted phone number. And so I wasn't listed in the phone book. And that, proactive action really helped me contain my, not really angry. I knew where it was coming from, but fear, fear for my son.
So fortunately, you had the foresight to have an unlisted phone number. And that helped you feel safer because then, they couldn't reach you by phone.
Right. Thank you, Shyla. I feel very hurt.
Thank you.
Did you want to do the debriefing?
Yeah.
Bill?
We should.
We're at about 45 minutes.
Yeah, we're about 45 minutes. That's what I was seeing. Yeah. All right. So Shyla, how is it for you? What sort of feedback might you want? Or what, what's also you noticed a progression in my attitude as we went along.
Yeah, yes, that did make it easier for me. Thank you for complying. So I'm just processing so much right now, and it's really good because I love to learn, and there are so many learning opportunities here, and opportunities to make mistakes and learn from mistakes, opportunities to just learn from others by observing and by listening, just listening. So and to practice what it means to really be present for the other person, because most of my life it's been about getting ready to respond. Right. And so it's like a 180-degree turn. So it's been a lot of learning for me.
Yeah. Okay. Edwin, Dominic?
Yeah, I have some comments. I really appreciate the learning and growth mindset. I can really feel that. So it really has a good feeling to it, talking about feelings. I do want to just give a tip about the approach when Bill wasn't listening to you, you weren't feeling heard. You kind of went into a bit of a lecture mode, like giving a lecture. The one thing you could do is say to Bill, you could say, Bill, I'm really not feeling heard. And then get a reflection. If you could reflect, Bill, I'm not feeling heard. Bill, would you be willing to reflect that?
Oh, so you mean as a speaker, it would be okay for me to say to him, I'm not feeling heard.
Yes, I'm not feeling heard. And then get him a reflection. You'd say like, well, that's sort of your problem. And I said, no, I'm really not feeling heard. Can you just reflect that back? And then until you get him to reflect back, you're not feeling heard. And then the next thing you can do is just give one sentence. I can't remember what you were talking about, but you just make it very short, the piece that you want him to reflect. And you say like, I'm very interested in feelings, instead of a whole long sentence. So you say, and then can you just reflect that back? And then Bill would say, yeah, you really got problems with feelings. Like, no. I'm really interested in feelings. Can you just reflect that back? So you kind of break it down into little steps. So instead of lecturing to him about, oh, would you do this? You actually use the empathic listening process to sort of, bring him into listening better. So those are just two kind of tips, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd like to summarize what I just heard, just so that
excellent.
I can understand fully what you said. So basically, this was when I was the speaker and Bill was the active listener. And so as a speaker, I can help the active listener by saying, instead of repeating in different ways or whatnot, and going on and on, I can just say to the active listener, in this example, to say, Bill, I'm not feeling heard. So that would cut through everything else and it would just get to the point.
And get a reflection on that. So he has to reflect one little piece, and you just keep going until you get a clear reflection that you are not feeling heard.
Okay, so first to get a reflection, first to say as a speaker, I'm not feeling heard, and get a reflection on that. And secondly, it is a team thing. I understand it's the team between the listener and the active speaker, active listener and the speaker. And so this is great input, because this is actually showing me how you can be a team with the listener. And so just by saying what you just said, what you just suggested, saying I'm not feeling heard, and then to really help the listener by cutting down on the sentences, like maybe half sentence, one sentence, two sentences, sort of build on that. And because I think in real life, I do believe that people are going to find it difficult to be an active listener. Because, it is an unusual thing. I mean, we have not been trained to do that. So these tips are very simple and easy to follow, and those are great.
Dominic?
Yeah, this is good. I was kind of focused on taking in all the secondhand learnings, but I guess the one thing is just like to be mindful of the time. That's the only mistake that came up. So just remind you of that.
Yeah, and I thought you did, really well. I mean, I'm not so, there's certain technical things you can do, and these are all good, but your demeanor and you're holding the circle, and I felt that never broke, whatever, so we can make technical mistakes, but if you're holding, the circle, and I felt that was held very well. In my own learning as an instructor, when you say challenge, people say challenge is medium. Medium means different things to different people, and I wonder what to do. And plus, I could totally act out, and we just wouldn't have an empathy circle. So what I tried to role model in the last part was that to trust the process, and then if people are sticking with you, there is some sort of, kind of palliative effect, some kind of soothing effect of being there and then participating. And generally people then conform, even difficult people. So that was sort of what I was role modeling there. So that's it.
I like what you said right now, Bill, about trusting the process. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I appreciated the challenge early on, where I got to practice it and I got another system. And then I'm just realizing that I was able to trust the process after that point. And that's why it just sort of struck me right now, what you said, because it was meaningful from what I saw just now.
Oh, good. Okay. I want to give Dominic a chance. Any last thoughts from anybody or anything? Okay. All right. Okay, Dominic. So set topic. Do you want any challenges?
Yeah, I'm typing in the prompt right now, so it's easier. My friend gave me this week. So this is the prompt for today. For challenges, I would say medium challenge, same. I think I would like to focus more on a participant who doesn't trust the process, and kind of like, I have a friend who wants it to be more conversation, and I've had to push back, and I don't really know how to do it. And then also I've had a friend who, like, when they're a passive listener, they'll be doing work and stuff. So I guess like those two things are kind of what I want to work on. Okay.
And I'll just start, I'll give you a little bit of a tip. With like in special ed, what we constantly found ourselves getting into and what we wanted to get out is what's called the power struggle. And that is an interpersonal thing where it's not about the rules or anything, but it's about my power versus your power. So in the empathy circle, and you'll see, and I'll act out. So what you want to get at is that it's not me setting a limit to, on you, but this is a process that we're trying. It feels weird. One of the things that I'll say sometime to short circuit, if I correct you, it's not a criticism of you or your ideas, but it's just to keep you in the circle process. So it's not that personal, you want to get away from that power struggle, but essentially, here's the process. I'm trying to do the best I can.
Got
Okay.
it.
Okay,
Cool.
great.
All right.
All right.
So the prompt, to repeat it, is what's your relationship to the past, present, and or future? I will start off as the active listener. Does someone want to speak?
I'll speak.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. I will be timing 3 minutes, and I'm ready when you are.
Okay, the topic, what is your relationship to past, present, future? Like nothing really came up for me initially around that. So maybe I'll just start with that. So I was just kind of sitting with that question.
Okay, I hear that in seeing the prompt, nothing came alive right away. So you kind of want to sit with that for the time being.
So the one thing, I try to relate it to empathy, how does that, to empathy, and there's a definition of empathy, I see as empathy as what you're doing, kind of listening to me, sensing, joining along on my, thought journey, and I see you empathizing with me. There's another aspect of empathy, which is I call imaginative empathy, is that we can imagine ourselves in different situations and we feel into that. So in a sense, thinking of the future is sort of like imaginative empathy. I put myself into this role of myself in the future, and I imagine what will happen. Yeah.
Okay, so I hear that you're relating the prompt to empathy, in that the common idea is that it's more present feeling with another person, but I also hear you introducing the concept of imaginative empathy, where we are visualizing another person. And so you can think of the future as imaginative empathy for our future selves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And sorry, time out. Bill, I love that you were chiming in, and it's great, but you'll have your time to speak soon. And it's Edwin's turn to speak. I will.
It's just trying to be like supportive.
I understand that, and that's great. But the process is, oh, sorry. Before, can the passive listeners mute themselves while we're focusing on Edwin? Edwin, you still have time. I stopped the timer, but there's nothing wrong with you chiming in, Bill. We're just want to make sure that Edwin feels fully heard right now, and you'll get your turn.
That's what I did. I chimed in. Now you're telling me I'm wrong.
I'm not. Yeah, I understand why you feel that way, but I'm not giving critiques to say you're wrong or to say that your opinion is bad. It's more for the speaker to feel heard.
Oh,
so it's for everyone's benefit.
All right, I'm going to give you the lower lip.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, Edwin, ready when you are. Yeah, 2 more minutes.
Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought, but it was something about, so if I think about working, later in the day, working in the backyard, so I sort of imagine myself going into the backyard, and I sense into what will be. Like, I have a little rat trap back there, and I imagine going into the bushes to check the rat traps. I sort of feel into the future, and that is, I just see what sort of arises, and that's sort of what so that's. And imaginative empathy is feeling myself into myself in the future, or I can imagine myself in any sort of role, right? I can be like an actor. I can, Meryl Streep can be, Margaret Thatcher, stepping into that role and feeling what comes up. So that's a little bit of what comes up about the relationship of the future.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
it kind of ties it in with empathy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hear you elaborating more on imaginative empathy, in that you give the example of, if you want to work in the yard later, you can picture yourself working in the bushes with a rat trap, etc. And then I also hear you relating it to the process an actor might have of, like Meryl Streep preparing for a role. We can imagine ourselves in the future or imagine ourselves in a certain role with imaginative empathy.
Yeah, so I can sort of imagine what it is like to go into the bushes. I can feel the bushes, and the felt experience. I can feel the caution of checking the traps, there's little feelings of caution, kind of curiosity. So there's all these different feelings that come up So I'm feeling into that situation. I'm sort of imagining it, seeing sort of a picture of it, but I'm also sensing the felt experience of it. And yeah, I see that as a sort of an imaginative empathy.
Okay, so I hear you're elaborating on the fact that we could feel into the situation where, you know, you could feel the fear of checking the trap or feel the bushes around you, and that not only can we imagine ourselves in the situation, but we can feel into it. And so that happens to be our time. So
okay,
thank you.
Yeah, fully heard.
Sweet, thank you. So now I will be the speaker. Let's have Shyla. Would you be my listener?
Yes.
Sweet, thank you. And I will set the timer. Ready. Okay. My relationship to the future. This is kind of what we talked about in our buddy call, Shyla, but I'm using imaginative empathy for myself in terms of picturing grad school, because I'm in this period between college and grad school. And so I feel a lot of excitement and a lot of anxiety at the same time.
So you are between undergrad and grad school, and you're using what Edwin also just mentioned about the imaginative empathy concept. And you're feeling anxiety and you're feeling excitement about the future.
Yeah, and I'm spent a lot of the pandemic trying to feel in the present and kind of let go of control of the future. But now that there's kind of a goal, long-term goal, I feel that I'm trying to get control of the future again, and it kind of, you know, feels a little impossible to do that.
So you learned during the pandemic, well, still in the pandemic, but sounds like in the early stages of the pandemic, you learned how to be in the present. But now you're being drawn again into being concerned about the future, which seems like an impossible thing for you to do, to be in control about the future. And it also sounds like maybe you're missing the time when you were able to be in the present.
Well, I'm not missing it, the feeling of being in the present, really, because it is, am leaning into the excitement. I like feeling excited about the future as opposed to like dreading the future. So it's kind of like a bittersweet feeling of, you know, I kind of like being in the future, but I don't want it to get a little too consuming of my time.
So you corrected me by saying you are not missing being in the present because you're leaning into the excitement of the future opportunities and possibilities, but you just don't want to lean too much on it.
Yeah, and I could feel like wanting to get control seems to be kind of this feedback loop of when I feel anxious, it's because I feel out of control. And the more I try to control the future, the more I realize that's impossible. So it's kind of this positive feedback loop that kind of feeds on itself.
So it's once you start dealing with the future and the control issue where the future is related, it seems like the circular loop where you get into the excitement, then you get into the anxiety phase, and then you lose the control, then it feeds back on itself. And so you're trying to make it not so circular.
Exactly. And that's our time. So thank you. I feel fully heard.
So I pick Edwin. Would you be my listener?
Mm-hmm. Listening.
So I recently read, not recently, I'd say maybe in the past couple of years, I read the book, The Power of Now. And I learned about the importance of being in the present.
So you read The Power of Now, and you're just seeing the importance of sort of being in the present.
Yeah, and it's not just the importance of it, but the necessity almost for me of learning how to be in the present. Just like active listening, we've never really been taught how to actively listen to another person. By the same token, we have not really been taught to be present and be in the now.
So you're just feeling that people haven't been taught how to be present in the present moment, just as they haven't been taught how to do active listening. So it sounds like that's sort of you would have liked it if you had been taught all that before.
Not quite, you know, again, that's right now practicing being in the now, because I accept my past, the lack of knowledge of active listening or feelings or being taught to how to be in the now. I accept that.
So you're actually, I didn't quite get it, that you're actually not regretting that that hasn't happened, but that you're just trying to be in the now, and you're just trying to accept what is in the now.
Exactly. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is I don't have any regrets for not having learned it in the past, but I'm grateful for having been exposed to it now, just like right now I'm being exposed to empathy circles.
So you don't have any regrets about not having been exposed in the past, but you're having some gratitude, feelings of gratitude now for being exposed to it.
Yes. I find Dominic's prompt very interesting because I really have most of my life been either in the past or in the future. And I suspect many of us are like that.
Yes, so you're really appreciating this prompt from Dominic because you've lived most of your life in the past or in the future, and you think most people are like that. So you really appreciate sort of thinking about this.
Exactly, because staying in the present is actually extremely difficult to do, I find, for myself, because it is easier to just reflect on your past or to sort of, you know, get into the future, what I call build castles in the air. The reason I say I'll stop at that.
Yes, so you finding it easier or to sort of be in the past or just to sort of daydream and build these castles in the air instead of just being in what's happening in the moment. It sounds like that's the time.
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, speak to Bill.
You know, I forgot about, you know, I mean, I just find this is just not working. I mean, I was thinking there are a lot of things that you were saying. You seem like nice people, and I had responses, but now I'm forgetting them all.
Yeah,
this
I
is
know
just
what you
not such a
mean.
great.
Maybe we could just talk normally instead of having this structured process. Maybe it's time for that.
I understand that this feels unusual because we don't normally we have conversations, but the structure of this format kind of requires more listening. So after this circle, we could definitely debrief and talk together. But right now it's Edwin's turn to feel heard. So Bill, please just try to reflect and reserve your judgment for later.
Okay.
Actually, maybe Bill, I could talk about how I kind of tired of this process, and you could just reflect that. So it's like,
it's
kind of like a boring process. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That works. Yeah. Whenever you're ready, let me know.
Yeah, I just if you want to reflect that, Bill.
Sure. You'd like to talk about how this is a boring process.
Yeah, isn't it? I just like just talking with, just kind of riffing off of other people. You kind of feel more free and more open instead of just, I feel really constricted here.
Yeah. So when you regular conversation, you can kind of like riff and improvise and things. And here it just feels kind of, constructed.
Yeah, it feels like there's this straitjacket. I feel like I'm sort of in a straitjacket, and I just kind of I want to just say whatever's on my mind, and instead of being in this straitjacket.
Yeah, so you feel that you're in a straitjacket and you'd like to be free.
Yeah, exactly, and I feel like it's sort of I mean, I did sort of agree to this process to begin with, but just kind of not sure about it anymore.
Yeah, so you agreed to it, but it doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, because it's like somebody says something, I just want to respond right away. It's like, hey, these are my ideas, and we just kind of, it's sort of more like jazz, let's just get into the riffing and playing off of all this stuff instead of this listening, reflecting. It's kind of a straitjacket.
So you feel like jazz, where people can improvise and we can talk and it's free, whereas this is just really restrictive.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the benefit of this process is. Like, why are we why do this? Well, I don't quite see, I don't see what the benefits are.
Yeah, why do it? Yeah, the benefits. So you're agreeing with me.
Yeah, I totally
Mm.
agree. Yeah, I'm
Mm.
totally agreeing with you that,
Mm.
maybe we could just kind of stop this process. Oh, yeah.
Let's have a vote. Um,
No, I didn't feel heard. I just want to hear about that. I
okay,
agree
so
with
you want to
you.
stop the, you agree with me, you want to stop the process.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel fully heard. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right. All right, Dominic, I'll talk to you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Ready when you are.
Okay. So it was interesting about time and the present. So I have a thought experiment that time can be processed in different ways. So if you were writing on a beam of light, there is no time. Time stops, and that's been proven by Einstein. I'll stop there.
Okay, so I hear that you're proposing a thought experiment related to the present, in that the thought experiment talks about how time is relative or can be experienced differently. And if you're riding on a beam of light, time doesn't exist, as proven by Einstein's theory of relativity.
Right. And but nevertheless, the light beam, we know, goes from one place to another. It goes from a star to us. It's traveled in space. So it's possible to travel in space without time elapsing.
Okay, so given that if you're riding on a light beam and there's no time, how does it explain? I hear you talk about how light does travel in space, like from the sun to us. So there's a possibility where time doesn't pass, but things travel in space.
Right. So all light beams, they come to the Earth, they bounce off, they go everywhere. So eventually they'll go everywhere in the universe and there'll be no time. And so essentially, there's only the present.
So I hear you saying that the light will hit Earth and bounce everywhere in the whole universe. So eventually, by that idea, light will travel everywhere, and then eventually there'll be no time and there'll only be the present.
Right. So then what that means is that rather than going one place in rocket ships or walking or anything like that, you can move through space psychologically.
Okay, so I hear you're proposing that rather than moving through space through rocket ships or walking or anything, you can travel psychologically.
Right, that would be the only way to do it. You would imagine someplace, if you're on the light beam, it's been there, and then you can go there.
Okay, so I hear you're proposing that if we imagine a place, you can go there because the light beam has been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so what that creates is sort of a spacious presence.
Okay, so that would create a spacious presence.
Thank you, I feel fully heard.
Sweet, thank you, Bill. Edwin, could you be my listener?
Listening.
Time it again. Okay, so what's my relationship to the present? I guess I want to touch on Shyla's point of returning to the present, being that should be the goal, in my opinion, for myself, because I don't know, there's so much of life to appreciate that I don't when I'm kind of lost in the clouds of planning my future.
So you're wanting to have a goal of sort of living in the present, because when you're sort of in the clouds thinking your future, you're not really living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess, sorry.
No, that was it. Sorry.
Okay. Maybe relating back to the future, I wonder if my 80-year-old self would look back and say, man, I wish I enjoyed my 20s in the present more.
And you're just kind of wondering, hey, when you're 80, would you sort of regret and wish you had lived more in the present now in your 20s?
Yeah, and I'm kind of weighing that idea of maybe I should enjoy my life with the desire to kind of embark on a very strenuous grad school journey that would consume my 20s. So those are two in opposition.
Oh, so you have sort of a opposition, you're ambivalent. Should you kind of work on grad school or kind of enjoy your 20s more, kind of be in the present and enjoy them? So you're kind of weighing that at the moment.
Yeah, and on the other side of the coin, I picture myself being 80 and saying, man, I wish I spent my 20s getting a PhD, for example. And so I wonder if there's a way to reconcile both of working hard towards my goal while taking the time to enjoy life.
Yeah, so you're imagining yourself in your 80s and looking back to the present, you know, about where would your regrets be? And you don't, I guess it sounds like you don't want to have regrets, but then somehow you want to be able to reconcile those two different choices as well.
Yeah, and then to a certain level, I feel like there's no way to even control that, because I could look back in my earlier life and say, like, man, I wish I tried this, or, you know, I wish I went to this school, etc. But where I'm at now, I kind of feel like it's just what happened, and now is now, and I don't really operate with regrets. So maybe that will be the case in my 80s.
So you're imagining that you don't operate with regrets now about the past. So you're imagining that you won't have regrets in the 80s either.
Yeah, hoping.
You're hoping. You're just
yeah.
You got a track record of not having regrets, so maybe it'll continue.
Exactly, and that's the time. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Oh, okay. Then I'll speak to Shyla.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Let's see. Yeah, these are interesting topics. You know, feelings and past, present, future. Yeah, I'm just sort of enjoying the topics that you've both come up with.
So Edwin, you feel you're enjoying the topics that Dominic and I have picked for the circles today, and you find it interesting.
Yeah, because I kind of relate them both to empathy. So empathy, the definition of empathy is to feel in feeling, and it's about the felt sense, you know, being more attuned to the felt sense. And, you know, how do we tune into, and that's a question for me too, is how do I tune in more to the felt feel, you know, the sense, how do I sense the feelings that I have and in others?
So you're relating both of these topics to the empathy circles and your mission and your goal to have a sense of your own feelings and also other people's feelings. And the phrase you actually used were the felt sense.
Yeah, and something that came to me is if I imagine myself being in the future, right, there's a feeling that happens in a place in my body in the present moment. So this gets complicated, right? So I'm imagining being in the garden, but that happens in my body. And so I can be aware of my felt sense of the future in the present moment.
So you were coming up with a complicated relationship between the present and future in your experience when you do your imaginative empathy, when you imagine being in a future situation, but you're actually feeling the feelings in the present body. So what you're trying to point out in that situation that you experiment with, that there is a connection between the future and the present.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow, you're even better at this than I am. Even more articulate than I am. So maybe you could reflect that back too.
So you're appreciating feeling really heard by what you just said. And you felt fully heard on that topic.
Yeah, even better than I was. I couldn't imagine somebody else would be able to reflect that. So I was kind of impressed with the reflection.
So you were impressed because you couldn't imagine that somebody would understand and be able to reflect that type of situation.
And I think that, I think a whole circle on this topic of feelings would be really good to do, even on both of these topics. Yeah. So a whole, yeah. So anyway.
So you're appreciating once again both of these topics, and you are perhaps thinking about using this for a whole circle.
And I feel fully heard.
Thank you.
Okay. Just want to recognize the time here. We have a little bit about 13 minutes or so. We can do another, keep on going for just a bit, or whether we're ready to kind of debrief.
I would choose debrief. What would you choose, Dominic?
Dominic?
Sure. Yeah, I'm down. Debrief is good.
The reason I chose debrief is because I certainly, again, like I mentioned before, I've learned so much, and I am looking forward to learning more in the debrief process.
Sure.
So I'm glad it's okay for you, Dominic.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right, so feedback for Dominic, Edwin, and Shyla.
Maybe we could hear from Dominic first.
Oh,
Would
sure.
you be willing to go first? Just how was it?
Yeah, it was good. I think last week's was way more strenuous. Like Kelly really threw it at us. So I was appreciative of the fact that it was, there was challenges, but I did feel heard in my actual, speaking role. So it was good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll give you feedback on that. You intervened early and gently. And so what I try to do is try to make it as realistic as possible. I didn't feel confrontational. So I still felt I didn't like the process. I was rebelling a little bit, but I didn't feel that I needed to push you. And so I thought that was effective, and I was role modeling, what someone might feel or might act after that first thing. So I thought that was a really excellent initial.
Thanks. Yeah, I was wondering after that happened, if it was too early. Like I cut off Edwin. I was wondering if I should have waited till he was done and addressed it. What do you think?
Well, I think that, that's always a judgment call. And the factors that what happened is that over the long term, it tended to have, a tamping down effect on my disruption. So I think it paid, as much as I could say, it paid dividends, but it did disrupt, Edwin. But you also said I stopped your time, and you gave Edwin, space for him to get back up to speed. So I thought that was a really good balance.
Sweet. Thanks.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
I had a question. So when Edwin and Bill, both of you were talking about how you don't really get the process, it's straitjacket and it's, so on and so forth, you'd like to riff off and all that kind of stuff. So was Dominic supposed to intervene at that point because you were actually fully expressing yourself, even though it was not in sync with the mission of the Empathy Circle, because you were talking against the Empathy Circle? That was confusing to me.
Right. So that was part of, we were within the bounds of the structure of the Empathy Circle, but we're totally allowed to express even like and Edwin, I think, gets a perverse joy when people so that's the way I see it. Edwin, how about you?
Yeah, it was a couple of things. One was I liked that I felt more relaxed when I saw the topic written down in the chat, because I could reference it back. So I was just thinking about that. And yeah, we were speaking. I was criticizing the circle, but it was being empathically reflected. So the thing is always to try to bring whatever is happening as much reflection in as possible. So for example, Dominic, when Bill was speaking, you could say, Bill, I hear you really don't like this process. And then another thing is you could say is, you will get heard to your satisfaction when it's your turn. And so those are a few things, but so you offer a reflection to whatever the criticism is, and then and then all the stuff that you were doing too. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is in a broader sense, trying to bring things into a reflective dialogue process as much as possible even in the criticisms, you kind of reflect back what the person is doing. Yeah.
Got it. So like to kind of reinforce that norm throughout
Right.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And then people
Cool.
kind of slip into that norm of, oh, I'm really, it's about hearing people. Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks. Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay. Dominic, any other questions that have come up for you, or maybe something wasn't addressed here?
I don't know. I didn't really address the people being distracted thing. I don't think it came up though. Because like, yeah, I wouldn't know what to do. Like one of my friends was just working and I was like, oh, hey, name, are you working on something? And he like had this guilty look. He's like, and then I was just like, yeah, this is for this speaker. So kind of reinforcing the norm, and then he paid attention. So I don't know what would happen if they were like, I have stuff to do. Like maybe I would say, well, you're welcome to turn your camera off if you want to join, or you can just, step out, you're free to do whatever you want. Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I think, if it's something unexpected, you are kind of improvising in the moment. And again, the things, rather than saying do this or do that, the things you're trying to balance is trying to, include them without disrupting or degrading the experience for the other people.
Got it. Okay. So probably saying like, okay, you can turn your camera off to be included, but we want to make sure there's no disruptions because the speaker needs to feel fully heard.
Right. And just see if and then when it's your turn, could you turn your camera, just try to give them a pathway back in. That's all.
Got it. Yeah. That makes sense.
And then also when you come into the circle, it's like, you can kind of set, well, everybody just try to pay attention, and maybe the benefits of paying attention just feels good for the speaker to feel, the attention on them. So maybe that too.
Yeah. I was also wondering, like, this is, I guess, relates to the intro, but I was wondering if there should be like, okay, do we agree on these norms, and kind of listing them out, maybe in the chat, kind of to get like that whole, like, you get freedom of expression and like lacking judgment, and then like attention when you're not speaking, I guess. What comes to mind?
Yeah, you can. I've done. I do it differently at different times, but it depends. Okay, this is what we're doing. Does everybody agree to that? So then you have sort of a sense of agreement. However, if somebody's speaking, they can be judgmental and do anything they want. It's just when they do the reflection, you're just listening.
Got it.
You can be as judgmental as you want when it's your turn to speak. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, those are all my questions.
I guess the challenge would be to be able to do all of this respectfully, right? Just sort of
empathically. I would say do it empathically.
Empathically, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Like if it's my turn to talk to you, I don't have to be respectful. I can be as nasty as I want. So,
what I meant to say is as a facilitator, because I'm still piggybacking on what Dominic was expressing as a facilitator and his friends and so on and so forth. Especially if it's family or my daughter or something, because you're not used to maybe being as respectful. But when you're in the circle and you're the facilitator, it just seems like you also have the onus of behaving as a role model of sorts, because it came up before that as a facilitator, you are being empathic. And in a way, you're role modeling what it means to be empathic to the rest of the people in the circle. So it seems like the onus is even more on the facilitator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, then you don't want to be judgmental and all that kind of stuff. You want to sort of model, right? The empathic way of being.
Yeah, because I didn't know till last time, sorry. Again, going back to the steps that were written on the chat at the end of the last debriefing session with the circle. Whereas a facilitator, you make the request and you get an agreement even in between times after you make the request. Like Dominic, you mentioned about agreement, and you too, Edwin, is like, get agreement to follow the structure even in the middle of the circle process. Like a, secondary agreement or something.
Yeah, I would just say that I had one time when, it's interesting because the people who are, a lot of times they'll be very intelligent people will have the biggest problem with it because they talk a lot, they have a lot of ideas, they have fairly good social skills. And so there's really, you're not saying, well, this is bad, this is a normal conversation. So one of the things that I kind of said is, wow, you have some great ideas, much better than mine, but we're just doing the process here. So I'm going to ask you to, and that sort of separates you as a personality in conflict from just the process. And, they kind of, they chafed a little bit, but then they got into it.
Got it. That makes sense. Sweet. One last thing, Edwin, could you what was the name of that book you're talking about? I think Imaginative Empathy.
I put the link in. It was focusing.org. That's the site for the focusing process.
Got it. Thank you.
In terms of imaginative empathy, that's more of the term that I've kind of been using. That it's not a common term out there for academics call it perspective taking or cognitive empathy, and I think imaginative empathy is a much more accurate term for it. So I should write something up about that.
Sweet, thanks.
But the focusing is about the felt experience. So just as a background, Carl Rogers really developed the active listening, empathic listening process. And one of his grad students was Gene Gendlin, and they actually worked together, and he brought in the aspect of speaking more from the felt experience. And so he has a whole process, and there's a whole community around that. And I would say what we're doing is sort of a foundation, a first step to, and that would be like a next step, for speaking. And in that process, you're just sensing, what am I feeling now? I'm feeling sort of a spaciousness, a warmth, feeling a little stress in my eyes, the eyes strained. And so you just speak from what you're feeling in the moment from your body, and then you get a reflection on that. And you always stay, you don't like analyze or anything. You just say, oh, it's sort of changing. It's kind of getting bigger. This stress is getting bigger in my awareness. You get a reflection. Stress is becoming bigger. Yeah, I just felt a little tinge of pain in the back of my head. So you just stay in the felt experience and just how it moves. And
I find that so interesting what you just said, Edwin, because the book Power of Now actually focuses on being in the body.
Right.
You need to be in the body in order to be in the present. I mean, in your case, you related to the future, but it's all about being in your body. Yeah. So it's all relating in a very interesting way.
Yeah, and in your body and naming what is happening in your body, the felt experiences that are arising in your body from moment to moment, and they change from moment to moment. Yeah. Yeah, because then you're not giving the power to your mind, because the mind is what takes you all over the place. But if you're in your body, you can be in the present and you're not giving the power to your mind, is what I read. And empathy
So
is central to that, because empathy is the process of sensing into what's happening in the body.
Yours and the other person's.
And the others, and in the relationship between you. Yeah. So it's totally central to all of this. The empathy is.
Well, thank you all. I feel like I've gained a lot from this.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Welcome back, everyone. Is everyone here? I think that's everyone. We lost maybe one or two people. All right, so we're gonna have our
Gloria had to leave. She excused herself.
Yeah, Gloria had to leave just a couple minutes ago. I'm not sure.
And Lala also had to leave. Okay. She didn't explain that to the whole group, but she told us in our group she had a class that she had to go to. So
okay. Yeah. All right, so let's each take, we're gonna do about a minute here for our checkouts. And you can share what were your learnings or insights from today's experience. And I'll go ahead and get started with Dominic.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm taking away from my learning is that in criticism to not be judgmental or pushy, but also to reinforce the norm of reflection within it. Like Edwin kind of brought up, oh, I hear what you're saying, and like kind of reflect it and then give the critique. And then Bill was saying like, don't be too pushy. Make sure you're saying like, I respect your opinion, and me pushing back doesn't mean you're wrong as a person or anything. So I thought that was really valuable.
Great, thank you. Shyla, what was your learning today?
Well, there was a lot of learning once again, and I'm grateful for that. To put it in a nutshell, just to trust the process, to believe in the process, and to focus on the process, no matter what role it is you're playing in the empathy circle. And also a suggestion that did come up, it was that in order to help your listener so that you end up meeting your goal of feeling fully heard, as a speaker, you can always say, I don't feel heard, and help the listener by using shorter sentences, or even just communicating directly instead of just expecting the listener to just do their jobs. So I learned how the speaker has that responsibility also.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Magali.
Yes, so one thing I learned is keeping the silence away is a good tip for facilitators. So. And I forgot my second one, but yeah.
Was that all? Was that okay? Gotcha. Thank you. Savannah.
I thought today was really good. I learned a lot. And during my facilitation, I had some conflict as my my challenge, and that was really good for me to learn how and when to break up the conflict between two people. So that was really good and a great learning experience for me.
Thank you. Daniel.
Yeah, I learned through my experience facilitating how to support not just the speaker but the listener more. I learned how like challenges that came up to me was you as a facilitator you can try to intervene if something's not going the right way, but then at the same time I also learned that you can try to give more responsibility to the speakers and the listeners to try to correct it themselves, and so I learned two different methods, and that was very valuable for me today. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Elisa.
Yes. I learned, really liked how Timothy, he gave us enough time for us to do our mock facilitation, and he also gave us realistic challenges. And what was really nice was that he allowed time where other people could also critique and compliment what each facilitator did. I learned that I need to be more direct in my facilitation. That it's important in order to lead the circle strong.
Oh, thank you for that. Wayne, what were your learnings?
Just each time I do these is going into the breakout sessions and the opportunity to sort of facilitate and then have these little issues coming up and it's all about experiencing. The unknown becomes less the more that you experience these things. So many thanks to Tim. Ran a great breakout and great opportunity to learn a huge amount of things, just from distractions to how people were responding to those, and yeah, no, it's been really good.
Great, appreciate that. Elizabeth.
So one thing that I learned or was significant to me was framing critique or encouragement to participate with the rules through the lens of supporting the speaker, because usually if the speaker is doing something wrong, it's pretty simple to correct. It's usually just pausing, but otherwise, if you approach everything from this is how we're going to serve whoever's speaking right now, then that helps, because it lets everybody know that they have their turn to speak and they can say what's alive for them. But otherwise, the goal is to serve the speaker and let them be heard.
So Monica.
So something that I learned was learning when it's the right time to intervene a disruptive comment. I learned that it's better to just address it right away than to wait towards the end.
All right. Thank you all for those learnings. Let's turn it to the facilitators. So Susan, why don't you go first?
Sure. It's exciting to see us all learning together. I liked co-facilitating with Kelly, who picked up we needed to get feedback from the person at the end of their facilitation. And I'm just appreciating that we're sharing our learnings as we go along. Also, 2 great topics from people. Thank you.
Yeah. Timothy.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear like Elizabeth and Dominic, who went in our group, are touching on something we brought up in our group, which is, the art of interruption. Like, how do you give direction in an assertive way, and at the same time honoring somebody without a lot of criticism, but like doing it in a way to serve the process or serve somebody being heard, right? That basic process. How do you do that, right? We really looked at, like, do you give a little empathy first before giving somebody direction, right? Still catching people really briefly or not, and how to do that in a way that that people are more likely to hear that, and how to express our authority as facilitators. So we looked at that and how and when to do that. That seems like a real theme of challenge and growth. And what I'm coming up with is, yeah, a little bit of empathy first. Hey, I hear you feel strongly about that, or this really matters to you. And, at the same time, I feel so important that we follow this process where everybody gets a chance, and you'll have yours at the next round. Will you agree, to pause and let this person finish and be that listener? So just like using that language, but using a little bit of empathy first. So yeah, just coming into more confidence in our authority in terms of setting the tone and making requests as a facilitator. So yeah, it was good exploration. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Timothy. I'm gonna break the norm of always having the person running it go last. I'm gonna go, because we talked about confidence in our group as well, and that's I think that's like a really central thing that's so encouraging in this process to see. Being a facilitator is so much about having confidence in the process and understanding how it works. And like in my journey of this, that's been so huge. And to see the people in our group like finding their way to that. And Daniel brought up a topic about confidence, which felt just good. And yeah, today was really encouraging and inspiring to see people working with the process and learning it and like building some confidence. And yeah, it's great. It's a great session. Very appreciative to all of you. So over to Lou.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, so my learning, so I got to learn about Monica and Elizabeth and Lala, who I haven't been in circles with before, and I love doing that. I love getting to know you a little bit and working with you. And yeah, and on the topic of confidence, I think, confidence grows with experience and with understanding. And I'm so inspired to hear all the insights and the learnings that everyone is having, and to experience Monica and Lala and Elizabeth as facilitators who are just fabulous. They're just doing so great. And so, yeah, confidence will come with experience. And everyone, I think, and everyone seems to be learning a lot. And I'm very inspired by that and encouraged by that.
All right. Bill.
Yeah, I was really appreciative of both Dominic and Shyla and their facilitation. And as an instructor, I when I'm kind of role modeling, disrupting, I was really getting into trying to, one of the things we say is, trust the process. So I was also, so rather than trying to just stay in role, I was trying, well, how would I be affected by this intervention? And I found that, I role modeled sort of like calming down and tamping down as we went deeper into the process. So that as an instructor, that's an important aspect, rather than being, as Wayne would say, the eternal plonker.
All right, Edwin.
Yeah, so I really liked what really resonated with what Timothy was saying. It's basically empathy first. Thinking about empathy is sort of the go-to, and I also see it as sort of a trust in empathy, that we trust that if we hear others and feel heard, that things just work out better. So there's kind of this, it's confidence, but it's also a trust in empathy and a grounding in it. I'm always struck by the creative topics that come up. It's like, we just open it to topics. It's like, wow, those are great topics. And they're just really fun to get into, and very, just love the creativity. And the topics that we had in our group came up with, it tapped into the felt experience, like empathy is feeling into. So feeling is very central to the whole empathic sort of way of being. And it was like the power of now, feeling into the present moment, the feeling into the future, sort of an imaginative empathy into the future. And I'm thinking we almost need like a separate module, an extra module after this, just about the felt experience and feelings, and the importance of feelings, and how do we, feel more deeply, name the felt experience. So got a lot of thoughts about next modules on dealing with going deeper into the felt experience. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, on that, I just am very grateful and appreciate all those shares. And let's have Timothy bring us home. Timothy.
Yes, right on. Thank you very much, Kelly. Well, we're slowly moving towards the end of our session 4 today, and we've got one more session in this 5-session training series on empathy circles. And so next week is going to be our last session in this particular 5-week cohort, we call it. That this group will be continuing. And so I just want to say right off the bat that, and Edwin, you can add to this, is that, you can take this training again. You can invite your friends and colleagues to participate in this particular cohort with you. And we have space. So that's going to be starting up in a couple of weeks. Edwin has the dates, but like, Edwin, if you could share how to do that, like you can invite some other folks, and you can even like take this again and become like a trainee to even lead these trainings. Like myself and Bill and Edwin, and to continue to grow the empathy circle. So Edwin, would you add anything about that? And then we'll come back to some next steps for closing here.
Yeah, so I guess we could do it, maybe just a temperature check here about taking part in the next cohort. You can, take it again a couple times as a participant, and you can also, if you feel ready to become a trainee, you can take on the role like Kelly and Susan were doing as trainees, and you do the trainee role a couple times, and you can move it into being a trainer. And this cohort is more optimized for pandemic professors. So we really want to kind of set this up as an ongoing training for pandemic professors. And so it can actually be taken over. The trainers can become pandemic professors, and that the cohort can kind of go on sort of indefinitely. I think B was going to set up a support group for pandemic professors. So it's like you can help with her facilitate this. It's going to be talking about what support do you need being a pandemic professor, and what struggles maybe you have, and you can be heard about that. And then you can invite others. You can help facilitate that for pandemic professors. And then the people that come in, they'll have some experience with taking part in an empathy circle, and then they can join this training too. So kind of integrate that. So we have the sign up sheet. And there's also 2 events. There's a Facebook event that I created for this cohort series and a LinkedIn event. So I'll send all this out in the emails, and you can go to those events, and you can invite all your friends. Like if you're on Facebook,
we're here.
You can
Yes.
invite 500 friends on Facebook too. They might not all come, but it's a way of kind of getting the word out. And on LinkedIn, you can invite 1,000 friends to the event. So it's just a way of kind of getting the word out, and so maybe just a temperature check. Who already knows that they would like to continue with the next cohort? So we got Timothy, Elizabeth, Dominic. Oh, great, Daniel, and so forth. Okay, great. Well, we got a good start, and Wayne. Great. So invite your friends, get out there, and come on, take part. And you can also hold an empathy circle, family, friends, and then have them take part in a circle, and then invite them to join the training. So I think I covered it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Edwin, for showing us kind of the next steps for this particular cohort. I really appreciate that. What's coming up next week is an integration of all of our learnings and some feedback about the training itself, helping it grow. So we'll be doing some good discussions, and like just kind of taking our learning and looking forward with it, and helping this training grow. The assignments, you're going to get an email as usual after today's session, and it's going to be a little reminder to fill out our little feedback survey. If you have any questions or suggestions about improving this training. Also want to really remind you to hold an empathy buddy call. Remember, it's an opportunity, again, to just experience like the satisfaction and maybe the relaxation connection that comes with practicing empathy with somebody else. So encourage you to do that definitely this week. Also, to see where and how you might want to host an empathy circle of your own in a topic that you love. Ask a great question that you're passionate about and hold a circle about that. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Also, keep reflecting on this question. How can this empathy circle practice and empathy itself help to build a culture of empathy in your culture where you live? Where can this grow, even in your own personal circle? Okay, so that's a quick review of next week and what's happening next. I want to give all of us trainers a chance to make any other final comments from today. Just wondering, Bill, or Edwin, Susan, Kelly, Lou. Go ahead, Susan. Just any final thoughts from today?
I was very grateful to have Bill Filler join one of my first facilitations. And I was kind of playing the role of facilitator. And when somebody finished, I'd say, thank you. And now it's your turn to choose a listener. And it seemed like that was a good thing to do. Bill suggested that I be very clear in the introduction and let people move from person to person on their own, which gives them a chance to step up, to take responsibility, to run it, and they seem to grow more confident. And I have learned to kind of hold the space for people to manage it without saying very much unless there's some confusion or an awkward pause. And I've really appreciated that and passed it along to my group, and they seem to like the idea too.
Wonderful, Susan. Thanks for that insight. Bill, go ahead.
Sure. Well, thank you, Susan. I'm glad that was helpful. And then my thing is the culture of empathy. Usually in movements, and it's like, we don't like to get dogmatic here or things like that. There's again, no salesman will come to your door, but we've created, rather than saying, we just have to, vote these people out, or we have to kill this many people and then everything will be great. We've actually created a culture of empathy right here, right now. We've created the future that we want to see. And I just wanted to reflect on how profound that is, how important that is, and how we can start to see that spread. So that's just my sort of, heartfelt thought. Thank you.
Oh, Bill, thank you so much. Other trainer final thoughts. We definitely have a few minutes.
Yeah, I'll say, so I want to build on what Bill said by saying that we create the world by the actions that we take, by the thoughts that we think and the actions that we take, we create the world. And and so just think about that, the lens that you look through when people are behaving, saying and doing whatever they say, and the actions that you take in terms of how you express yourself, or whether you are being empathic to yourself and to others, and whether you're open to yourself and to others. Those are choices that you can make in every moment, and the choices that you make a difference. And in the way that Bill said that, we've created a culture of empathy here in this class by how we've spent our time together and the things that we've done together. You can begin to do that in your own world by the actions that you take. So just to be conscious of that. That's not an order and it's not a demand. It's just something to be conscious of.
Thank you. Edwin, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just put again the link into the feedback form. Everyone might have questions. There's a lot of questions. So if you fill out that form, post your questions in there. We'll address those at the beginning of the next session. So,
cool.
And also I'll be sending out an email that goes more about the culture of empathy, to just think about that, what's your next steps with building a culture of empathy, and there'll be some links for just to kind of ponder that and talk about it a bit in the next session.
Cool, thanks, Edwin. And then my last thought is, my heart goes out to each of you, because I'm like you. If you have a hard time inviting people to an empathy circle, that's me. I'm so sensitive. Like, people don't want it. They ridicule it. I don't believe they want it. I have a hard time asking people. And so I just remembered an insight that Penny Livingston gave me. She's a wonderful trainer in permaculture and in global kind of ecological stewardship. Penny Livingston, she's great. And she told me once that this might help me actually in the next week or two, is use water as your mentor. Study water. How does water flow? Where does it go? How does it behave? And actually consider water as a guide in terms of how we relate to each other. So for me, a very simple way I interpret that is, hey, I'm going to flow everywhere. I'll come down like a gentle mist, or flow down where it's easy to flow. And I'll make requests, and I'll hold empathy circles for people who want to do empathy circles. If they don't, I'll flow somewhere else. It's fine. Also, when somebody wants to stand in the way, I'll flow right around you. I'll go have an empathy circle over there. So I love that idea. I kind of relax with that idea, like using water as a mentor, as a guide, in terms of offering empathy as something in my life, or an empathy circle around me. That inspires me. It helps me relax a little bit. So that's me. That's my final thought for the day. Just before we go, I would love to hear how you feel as a result of being in this training today. So in the chat, if you don't mind, writing, everyone's going to put a little question there, but write like 1 or 2 words of, as a result of being here today, how are you feeling? Using those feelings. Bill, I love Bill right off the bat. Mad respect. Yeah, strong. Someone feels more confident. I love that. But just describing the state, right? Energized, inspired, grateful, encouraged, empowered. Another person feeling grateful, re-energized. I'm feeling hopeful. I just put that in. Thankful. Good. There's inspired, energized, encouraged, empowered. Wow, all in a row. Many feelings. Energized is a primary one. So something's happening here in this culture of empathy where it moves energy. Energy is moving. We're more, maybe a little bit more alive today as a result of being here. For me, that's gratitude. Would rather be alive. When death finds me, I'd like death to find me alive. So that being fully alive together, it's an honor. Thank you, folks. So yeah, we're about done. That's it. We'll see you next week, okay? Invite others. Come on. Yeah, let's do some jazz hands. What? Okay, cool. We're all done. Take it easy, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a great week.
Next week.
Yeah. Thank you.